I am Tom from Just One Pack, and this is AC on the Short Alpha Clash podcast, where I'll talk all things Alpha Clash on my way to work. Now, we are in the spoiler season for Echoes of Eternity, and we are getting spoiled more than just cards. We also get new products. So, let's talk about champion decks. Now, if you don't know, a quick intro to champion decks. Champion decks are the replacement for the two-player starter kits called Clash kits. Champions decks is just one deck instead of two, but instead of being an introductory product, it is a fully competitive 60-card deck, I think, with sideboard, ready to play out of the box. You need to find a friend, and that said friend needs to have a deck of their own, but then you're ready to go. So there's a little bit more to that, and I will get back to that, but I want to start somewhere else. So the premise for the Clash kits was that they would be sort of a beginner's deck, a starter pack, so to speak. And I said so on several occasions that they were starter decks. They were meant for starting, teaching the game and getting into the game. The thing is, they were a universal starter kit, or tried to be, sitting squarely in the middle of being something a TCG trained, if I can use that term. Not someone who's not new into TCGs could pick up and play, or someone brand new to TCGs should pick up and play. And it sort of did neither of those things. In my opinion, the Clash kits were too advanced, or too complex, not advanced, too complex for a new player, new player, who has never played TCGs before, to actually learn the game. I am, barring the first one, the Moxie Magnate deck, the rest of them started slowly getting so complex that they were not easy understood. That doesn't mean that they weren't fun to play. It just means that for a brand new player, they were too complex to learn the game from. There were too many special cases in them, so to speak. So, on the other hand, and I think they mentioned this in their podcast through the portal when they revealed these cards or these decks. On the other hand, these decks were not competitively viable. So you couldn't pick them up and go to your whatever day you play and win anything. They might work for rivalry pursuits, but if you brought one to an awakening, you had to be a very skilled player to bring home a win with those. Right? So they sat squarely in the middle of this landscape, and this is completely this is on me, right? There's no indication that this is the reason, but building decks like that, going through the product development, building the decks, getting them printed, so forth, is an expense, not least in terms of money spent on production, but also in terms of time. It's a very time-consuming project to build such starter kits or kits at all. And Rising Empire 2 is a small team, remember, so they want to optimize something, but they want to do it better as well, right? So that seems to be the mantra from there. So what do? Well, you choose a side as a starter. You choose a side. You're either gonna make decks that are easily accessible for new players, easy to learn, easy to play with, so to learn the mechanics, or you make decks that is actually going to make you able to compete. Now, which one it is completely depends on the audience for these. And my bet is that indie TCGs, just like Alpha Clash, is not picking up that many new players who had never played TCGs before. And those who are picked up in that manner is picked up through ambassadors, or ambassador adjacent. I mean, the real ambassadors, or people like me that just go around showing it each and every one. Anyone who just looks at the cards gets an introduction, right? So you have to choose one of those, and being an indie TCG, most of your players will come with a base knowledge from from other TCGs, or be introduced by someone that is already going to be building starter and learner kits and lending them out, right? I know the few places I know of, this is the way you're introduced to it, right? So choosing the side of the more competitive decks makes perfect sense to be the one they produce. Now, that also means that this is one of my, I have only 2 grievances. I'm very positive about this product. This is one of the things that now is now not a new player product, which is sad but understandable, if I use that term. As I said, most new players are introduced through other players, so it won't be a big problem. Now, what is in that deck? Well, as I said, it was a 60 card, including sideboard, or 50 cards, sorry, including sideboard, or plus sideboard. Competitive deck. And when I mean competitive, I really mean competitive, or competitively viable. The 2 decks chosen for this first excursion into champion decks are truly champion decks. It is the number 1 deck from the progenitors gambit in US, a Lord Krung deck that won the tournament. So at least they can do that, right? I mean, that is the best or the second best, depending on how the meta went in, or depending on how the matchup would be in a fight between the Philippine one, the Asian Philippine one, and the American one, right? So this is a top tier deck, no question about it. The other one is the best non-Krung runner-up at the same progenitors gambit. Both of these decks are very, very competitively viable, and has been demonstrated to be so, right? So that is a great thing. Another great thing about this is whenever they come out with a new product, we sort of, or at least I do, have a tendency to look what other TCGs has done before, and they always do it a bit differently, right? So Flesh and Blood quite a while back, changed their model for decks from the at the very beginning, where you could buy these blitz decks, small decks like in a regular card box, right? Like playing card box, blitz decks that allowed you to buy one of these fairly cheap, play it, and be introduced to the game, right? That was the very start of the product. They had the same issue, or you could not take one of these decks and bring them to a constructed tournament and do anything, right? You had to spend a lot of resource upgrading it. Now, in Flesh and Blood, their lowest tier competitive level is the Armory level, and what they did is that they produced, they took out the Blitz decks and put in the Armory decks. The Armory decks are, it's not a top tier deck, but it is a more viable product. You could take it to an awakening and have a fairly good time with it, right? So there is that. That is all excellent. They now produce something, and they kept producing them to not be top level competitive, but being a fairly good deck to start your Flesh and Blood journey. Now, Magic did another thing. They took the actual top tier decks from their tournaments and turned them into viable products, right? As a I could call it champion decks because I can't remember what the real name was. They made those decks, but what they did was that they watered them down so that they weren't quite as good as the real thing, meaning that you had to go out on the secondary market and start buying up important pieces that was hand-picked out of the decks, just so you could have the same deck. Right? That meant that the power level was not quite the same, and I haven't done the research for this, but my understanding is that the cards taken out were some of the key pieces in terms of secondary market value. I think that is a horrible choice, because that I don't think that they radically changed the strategy of the deck, but the effect of the deck was changed. Now, Alpha Clash is doing none of that. They are printing the same decks, card for card, as the ones that turned up, and that means that even the high power cards and the rare cards that were in those decks are still in those decks. So if you buy one of those, you get that complete set. So what that means is that you get the powerful, high value game-wise cards in that configuration. There's no watering down. There is no subpar level. You get the actual card. That means that if you are a new player and you want to jumpstart into this, you buy a Champions deck and you're off for the races. Could you upgrade that? Probably. You could at least change it. I'm not going to go toe-to-toe. My deck building skills is not equivalent to those decks. Let's just put it that way. But you could change them. You could have start mixing things up, adding new cards as they come out, and start playing around with them. But now you're in, right? So you have a way in. You don't have to lose the first many, who knows how many games. Now, there is a small worry here. That's not a big concern, that the decks could be a little bit challenging for new players. But again, it is not meant for new players. It is meant for people who know TCGs and are ready to start actually playing it, right? So there is that. The only sour grapes in this juice, for me, is the price point. That I know that Rising Empire Studio cannot talk about the secondary market, because whenever there's apparently some legal thing there. I don't know. I'm not American, so I don't know. However, when you price this product, maybe I should put it on. In the Clash kits, you got 100 cards, 101, I think, cards, for, I think, 25 euros, something like that, right? And now you get 60, I think, 50 plus sideboard, right? 60, 65, something like that, for 50 euros or 50 US dollars. That is a little more than half the product for twice the price. That is just bad math. That is price-wise. That is not something I'm happy about, right? And doing that and not recognizing a secondary market, that just doesn't match up. Because if I say valuable cards, I have to choose whether this is valuable in terms of monetary value or gameplay value. And to me, it will always be the gameplay value that should be significant, right? But that is not reflected in the price of a newly produced product, right? A newly minted product. Now we have a huge gap in the singles market. It's really hard to find and buy singles, especially if you're not close to one of the um, communities. I don't know why that word was hard. If you're not close to one of the physical communities, getting singles is really, really not easy. However, um, we also want a singles market to be built, right? Some of these cards, something like the Boom, right? Here Comes the Boom is, as far as I remember, in the Death deck. One of these decks has Here Comes the Boom, right? And that card goes for something around what, $8-9, something like that. Only it is it's not in stock anyway, is it? At least not in TCG Player. It's simply not in stock. So the odd thing about this is that we need to support the secondary market, but not really do that, because it's a very different story. Let's not go down that road. Anywho, the point I'm making is that I get less product because this is not more expensive to produce than the starter kits were. In fact, I think the starter kits were a lot more expensive to produce than this one. So I kind of feel sad. This is my only gripe with these, is that they are more expensive for less product. Although I know that in terms of gameplay wise or competitive level wise, I save money on buying these as in comparison to buying a boxes to build these cards, or even buying the singles. So I know that. I wish they weren't twice the price. I understand that they should go up in price, but twice the price for half the cards. I must underline, that is my only grievance with this product. I think it's the right choice. It's the right product. I really like, I didn't even talk about it. I really like how this product sort of integrates the community in this. So that is one of the key benefits for an indie TCG. It's a fairly small community. We all know who the community leaders are, right? We know Zach Bond, for instance. We know who he is. We all know who he is. So being able to buy his card, almost all, being able to buy his deck is something special, right? Michael Hamilton is the other one. Him too. We know who he is. He's right. He win every second game, right? So getting that involvement with known faces in the community, I think that is absolutely brilliant. I'm not advocating for fan posters. I'm not saying that, but having that recognition I think that is really, really, really cool. So it's the right product. I think as far as I've seen so far, it's the right execution. They even come with, they're fairly simple production-wise, at least what I've seen. They are just a deck of cards, but one of the cards is sort of a strategy guide from the creator of the deck, telling us how they intended this to work, what they thought of, how they think we should play it, which is brilliant. It's like a masterclass, right? I love that product. Am I going to buy it, even though I think it's a little bit expensive for what it is? Absolutely. I'm definitely going to buy it. And it's one of the things I'm going to sleeve up. I want to build my own decks, but it's one of the things I want to sleeve up. And when I have new players that already know about TCGs, this is one of the products I want to show them. As soon as they learn the game, I want to show them this and say, try playing with this one. Now you get not just a feeling for what the game is, but what a powerful game is, and that is such a good hook for new players. I mean, if you've ever seen a fairly new player just learning the game rules, and you hand them a well-structured deck, and they just sit there and with the feeling that they are barely operating this. They understand what's going on, but it's like magic in their hands, completely swamping their opponent, who oftentimes is me with one of my own builds, right? Just swamping, sitting with the experience that this is such a powerful move that they have at their fingertips. That is a brilliant experience. We want that in new players' hands, and I think Champions decks can do this. So, one grievance, and it's not really a big grievance, to be honest. We are very, very far from the horrible cases from Magic or complete bungers set up for collector cases in Pokemon stuff like that. We are well within good limit. I think they are a brilliant product. The right product at the right time. I am definitely going to get at least 2 of each, but that's just me. Anyway, that was my ramble about Champions decks. You should go check them out and pre-order them as soon as we can. Echoes of Eternity comes out the 29th, and a week ahead of that, a week after that. That is the release week. Absolutely go look at that, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.